Hello, Oz here. Just wanted to give a brief update on some of the stuff I was working on from the dev side. This will be a little bit like my first devlog, basically. So, a lot of ground to get covered. Just wanted to start with some of the actual gameplay footage, see a little bit of what I was working on. So, currently, I implemented very basic Fishtank. Just some really simple fish going on there. I know Noah was also attacking some of the fish movement, so didn't really focus on that too much. They're just kind of scrambling around here. But what we have here is basically the introduction to the base game, right? So we have these fish swimming in this modeled 3D tank in this room environment. All very primitive and very simple. So here the game has some very basic controls. I've listed a couple of them to the top right there, so I'll just kind of go through them. What we have now is basically a simple camera setup to orbit around the fish tank. And so this was implemented using Cinemachine, which made it a lot easier. Instead of having to code up a whole bunch of stuff, Unity has that built-in Cinemachine package, which makes it very easy. And so what we can do is now swap between the different fish and focus on them using the sticks from the gamepad controller, but since I'm on the keyboard right now, also have it implemented for the A and D keys as well as the arrow keys. So by pressing those, we'll just switch focus to another fish, and we can see that the camera now orbits around this fish that's in question, little Rupert here. So we can use our zoom wheel to kind of zoom in on him. That's about as far as I make it go for now, but we have control over the zoom level, in addition to where the camera is positioned at along this orbit around him as well. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and zoom out of Rupert. Maybe we'll switch over to Charlie. With each of these fish, we can see in the bottom left that the actual information about the fish is being updated as well. So with Charlie, we can see that he is 2 years older than Rupert, who's kind of a new fish around the block. Charlie is also green in color, and his speed is a little bit faster than Rupert apparently, but I don't see much of a speed difference here. So that'll be something to work out the bugs for, but this is all just very demonstration, like very base. The fish tank is also really small, just to note that a lot of this is just placeholder, getting the base functionality in there at first, and then we can kind of tweak and expand to get the feel right as we go along. And so finally there's Oscar. And so size is also another thing that I have in here. It just kind of scales the fish up and down. I actually don't have that really implemented. Well, it's implemented, but it's not. It's a little bit rough. I don't have it implemented for this demo, but can probably post some footage or some brief gameplay footage of it at some point later. So yeah, this is the view to look at the different fish, and then there's also the tank view. This shows up now kind of at the bottom left there, so it says we have 3 fish, and this is day 10 of running our fish tank. So this is kind of just like a proof of concept, like what information do we want to see from this view of the tank when we're not zoomed in on any particular fish and just want a general overview of what's going on with the fish tank. So there is that. What we also have implemented right now is, let's see, so we did zoom, cycle fish. We can feed the fish as well. So this comes in 2 steps. So the first step is, let's go ahead and open a little brief store view. So I'm going to press I. And this is a very simple store view. It shows the mouse, and it's just one single button, buy food. So we can see in the top right, or the top left rather, we have 0 food right now. And as I click on buy food, it's exchanging the money that I'm accruing every second. So I'm just getting one single dollar every second. And this increments the number of food that we have remaining here. So now we have 40 pellets of food. It's just kind of the placeholder food. So I'm going to press I to close the shop. That gets rid of it. And now with this 41 food, I'm going to go ahead and feed the fish. So what happens is I basically have for now just a static camera that the view shifts to. So this is another Cinemachine virtual camera. So anywhere you're looking, you press E, it says enter the feeding view, and it just boom goes to this static camera, and you have this box of food ominously floating over the fish tank. So what happens is you can press the mouse button, this left click, and this will actually shake the box and drop some food into the tank for the fish to consume. Sometimes it can drop out of the tank, sometimes it can drop on the side of the tank. It's very rough right now, but you get the idea. Right now the fish don't actually do anything with the food, it's just kind of there. But yeah, just another proof of concept thing. See what we think, how we want to imagine this. This is just kind of to get the ball rolling to see how we would like a lot of these things to be realized in the game. So yeah, just a really brief example of that. And so I think the last feature here, that's pretty much everything so far. The last feature here is actually the kind of scene transition placeholder slash save game. So what happens is when we press the space button, this will actually cause the game to go into this transition. And it'll save the game. Very much like something like an Animal Crossing type of effect. I think I saw that Lost had wanted this type of effect somewhere. Maybe not, but yeah, I think it'd be a cool way to transition between things like the store view, the different rooms, stuff like that, the menus, everything really. So yeah, some cool funky transitions. We can mess around with the shapes and stuff as well. Right now I just have it as that basic circle. And yeah, I think that'll be all for the basic gameplay functionality. So now I'll go into a little bit more of the technical details. Alrighty, so this is the basic Unity scene set up for now. What we have here, very simple scene. So there's the user interface, which actually gets rendered way over here, so not even close to the actual scene. And so this is where we control everything on the UI. And I'm just starting from the top down. There's the event system, the post-processing stuff, which is just all some default stuff for now. The actual fish tank, this is a prefab that's just been placed into the scene. And so this fish tank has a script that pretty much just controls, this won't be here for long in terms of the fish, but just the size and the dimensions of the tank. So we have the bottom left of the fish tank here and the top right, and this is what I'm using to just determine where the fish are going to move for now. There's also the room prefab, which is just this little box made out of some quads in Unity. They just have a really simple material on them, and yeah, that's all that's there for now. The room also controls that little circle wipe effect transition basically, but it's to be determined where this will be placed. I think it'll go somewhere else and not on the actual room controller. We'll see. There's the player, which is pretty much just this floating camera. So inside of this player prefab, we have the controller, which does a whole lot of stuff, from controlling and interpreting the different player inputs using this component to managing the different cameras and which ones take priority through commands, having a reference to the room, the fish tank as well as the right now currently hidden food box. Food box is right here. It's just deactivated while we're in the browse the view mode basically. Yeah, so player has these Cinemachine cameras underneath of it. So the way that Cinemachine works is that you have a single main camera, which is typical to a Unity scene, but you can have multiple of these Cinemachine cameras, or virtual cameras as they used to be called. And they basically can pretty much take over where this main camera is placed based on their priority. So right now, the tank cam, I think, has the highest priority of 1, so that's the one that's in focus right now, which is just this one that browses around. There's the fish cam that will orbit around the individual fish. So it's currently doing that, but it's deactivated. And then the static camera, which always kind of points at the tank from this angle, and this can be changed. So it's a really powerful package there. It does a lot of cool stuff. That's all I have it doing for now, really basic. And then finally there's the fish. So these fish are just instantiated game objects. They're created from the save data that I have on my system right now with the different fish settings. Yeah, they have a couple of different features here. Most important ones are fish controller and the behavior agent. So fish controller just contains information about the fish, like its body, its name, a reference to the billboard text, the label for its name that's floating over it, stuff like that. So this just manages a lot of those different things. The other thing that's important here is the behavior agent. And so this is what I think will be a cool thing to work with for this project, which will basically allow us to give the fish a lot of different AI behaviors and functionality and make it really scalable and adaptable so that we can dynamically change that. So I'll hop into this and talk about it really briefly, I think. So there is a Unity asset here, which is a behavior graph called basic fish. It's in the resources behavior graphs folder. So if we double click on this, it'll take us to this behavior graph. This is cool because it's essentially a tool that we can use to implement behavior trees in Unity, which are a popular AI approach basically for adding AI behaviors to these agents that are in the game. So in this case, there are fish. What this behavior graph does is very simple right now. There are kind of two parts here. There's the blackboard over here, which is the variables that the fish agent has access to. And so these variables are the game object, which is in this case, the game object that actually has the behavior graph agent. So here it's just our little fish game object. I also added movement destination, so this just tells us where the fish is going to go. This is determined by these actions, which we'll see in a moment. And so right now we can see that this is changing for each of the fish. So here we'll see that the movement destinations are changing, and I actually have them visualized here using these gizmos. So there's also the speed of the fish. This isn't a perfect setting right now, but it's just there as a placeholder. I think all of the fish, that's probably why all the fish are moving at the same, because I'm not actually changing this. They're all set to 0.01. That's okay for now. And then there's finally the fish tank. So the fish need to have a reference to the tank that they're within so they can determine where they can move within that tank itself. So that's the first part, is just our blackboard of variables. And then now we have the actual behaviors. So every time we run this behavior graph, we'll do two things. So the first thing is that the fish will determine its next movement. And the way that this works is we essentially have this kind of action that we can create and customize in Unity. And this is actually a C# script behind the scenes, but it gets translated so that we can make it a new action here on the blackboard, or in this behavior graph rather. So we can say self, which gives us a reference to the game object, determines next movement destination. And so this is what I have here. It's going to modify the value of this, and it's going to do it within the bounds of the fish tank that we have specified here. And then once we've determined the next movement destination, we're going to have self move towards the movement destination with the speed that's specified. And so I think if I click on one of these and click edit script, it's actually going to take me to the, maybe even edit definition will do it as well. It'll actually take me to the source code for editing this. And so I will pop that up in maybe another screen in the next section. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the behavior graph and the fish stuff. I think this will be a cool way to kind of do things since it's very easy to read, it's very scalable, and we have a lot of flexibility. So it's kind of the a mix between doing traditional scripting and stuff like that versus the more visual scripting, and yeah, some of the benefits that come with that as well. So we can easily visualize what any fish is doing at a given time. Alrighty, so here is what the coding process kind of looks like, how I have it set up right now. So all of the resources related to anything that's an asset. So the behavior graphs, the animations, the prefabs, materials, other types of assets like for the UI and fish data stuff, all that's located under resources. Some basic scenes are here. I actually want to try to move some scenes to this workspace folder so that, when we get to a point where we're working on separate scenes and just debugging things, we can all have a little bit of a area that we can do just stuff of our own scenes there without running into merge conflicts because we're editing like the same scene, and it gets a little messy with Unity. So I think this workspace folder worked really well on a previous project. And so then there's the script folders, which I think is the last most important one going on here right now. I've broken things up into relevant areas, and so these are based on global things that all of the, I guess, scripts will need access to at some point or another. There's the fish and fish tank related stuff here for now. Probably will break this down a little bit more in the future. Scripts related to the items like the fish food box, player stuff, so that's the player controller, the player inputs. Right now I have the save system there, but that'll probably be moved to utilities. The room controller stuff, not really a lot going on there. Stuff for the store, this just allows us to, actually not a lot going on here either yet, but this will manage what shows up in the store and that type of stuff. User interface, so this allows us to kind of control and manage what is, how to access these things that are shown up in the user interface and access those serialized buttons and labels and stuff so that we can update those from the scripts. And then there's the utilities, which are really general, just kind of toolbox things that we can reference from any script as well. So that's kind of the setup here. Right now, these are all set up as well to have these assembly definitions. And so what these are in Unity is essentially they are these assets or tools that we can add to help to organize our code better into relevant script areas. So right now I have all the player related stuff under this Lonnies Fishtank.player assembly. And this is going to be the same for the items as well. It's going to be the same for the fish tank area as well. And so how this works is it will compile all these scripts together and as well as reference any of the dependent assemblies that they have here. And this basically helps us to reduce the domain reload time for Unity as well as helping us to organize our code a little bit better. So very useful tools. Definitely want to try sticking to this convention and using these more so that the project is nice, clean, and scalable. I've also thrown some readmes in here. Half of these are empty for now, but hope to flesh them out over time with some basic information. In addition to these readmes, there's also an autodoc that I have generating for this project. We'll look at that in a second. And so, yeah, inside of here, can just kind of browse this at your own leisure, but this is just all the different code that I've implemented so far for the player functionality, fish controller, etc. So I added a bunch of comments on here, so that's the only reason it looks this long. Probably would be wise to either break these files down a little bit more into the relevant subdomains and stuff like that, so this isn't like a monster class. We usually want to break these things down into several different files so that the files are clean, readable, and yeah, so that will be kind of long term. But for now, they're all documented with these XML comments, and so I made an intent to really comment on the use the XML stuff here so that we can generate these auto docs so that they look very clean and readable. And so whenever there's something new added, we can easily just reference that and get an idea of what it's supposed to do. Or even if we need to go back and see what we did in the past and what the intent was, we can extract it from the auto doc. So I think that probably is a good transition and segue into the auto documentation. Alrighty, so there is this docs folder here, which is inside the Unity project. And so this basically is used to generate documentation from our C# scripts. So I've already generated this and pushed the latest version of the documentation for what I've done here. So I'm just going to reveal this in the File Explorer, open this site, and I'm going to open this HTML, index.html here. And so this is just a local web page, and this allows us to view the documentation for the project. So I don't have too much here right now. This is like the home landing page. This is some custom documentation that I threw in here. These aren't quite rendering as they should. They're supposed to be what they're called mermaid diagrams. So it's supposed to show a flowchart about how the assemblies are kind of linked together here and how the GitHub repo structure is linked together here, but they're not quite showing up here. Maybe I'll show it on, actually I can pull it up really quickly. Okay, so this is what the introduction one is supposed to look like. So this shows how the assemblies are kind of linked together and the flow of dependencies here. And then the other one is the GitHub repo structure. So this shows how all of the repos on this GitHub, which I'll get to in a moment, are linked together and what purpose they serve essentially. So maybe it would be wise to add these little comments that I did here, these descriptions, to these ones as well. So these assemblies have a little bit more detail into what they're actually, and insight into what they're actually doing, but task for later. And so finally with the documentation, there's the actual API page here. And so this is the list of, I have to figure out if these are the namespaces. Yeah, these are the namespaces. So it says it here. And so these are the namespaces, which right now I have corresponding to the different assemblies and where they're compiled. And so they basically give an overview of what's in this namespace and what can you do with it. So there's one for the fish. This is an overview of all the scripts and classes in the fish area. There's one for global. Right now global only has these interfaces, items, player. And so right now player has these kind of more player-centric things here, but it also has these commands. So I'm using the command pattern to do a lot of things regarding the player. It makes things a little bit cleaner in terms of how we add functionality to the game. And so, yeah, I think this will be in another area here since it'll be a little bit easier to keep track of without having it, trying to find it in the player view over here. So there's the room, store, some UI stuff here, and then finally the utilities. Yeah, so that's it for the documentation. This is also existing on the GitHub repo as I shown, and it is its own repository. The only other thing I wanted to show regarding the code is also how the data is saved in the game. So right now I'm using this save system right here, and what this is doing is it's saving the player data as basically as a JSON file. And so this file is located at %appdata% local low fishhead games Lonnies Fishtank. So if we actually navigate to that folder here on any system, it will bring us here, and what we can see is this save data.json. Also have it writing out as a binary file, but I don't think we have to worry about that right now. We can just do it as a JSON for now to easily see the configuration information. So right now for debug purposes, we can go in and change information about the size of the fish, the speed, the color, age, their names, even how many there are if we just duplicate this. It can also change information about the amount of money that the player has as well as the food. So really good way to just kind of test out the save data states and edit and tweak some things here. So want to get into the habit of easily making these builds of the game accessible for everyone who wants to check it out, play around with it, and even see their assets in the game as we begin to add more and more stuff. So right now on the GitHub page, there is a place for this, but I think for now it's a little bit easier just to throw it on the Google Drive since everyone has access to this. So with the previous gameplay that I just showed, the Unity project can actually be downloaded here and launched from your computer so you can mess around and play with the game. Controls should be in there as well. Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward process. But I like having it on the GitHub page because then we can see things like, yeah, the features that were added to it. Loading the game, for example, is a feature I added with this newer build. Feeding the fish and swapping between the scenes. Here I have a link to that Google Drive download there. And what this will essentially look like is a running list of these builds that are uploaded. I guess the commits that are associated with them, that's some GitHub terminology, as well as we can see the previous commits and, the differences between them as the progression goes along and what was added. So I think this is a pretty cool way to keep track of it. I think this will work out pretty well. So now's a good time to get into the GitHub organization. So I created a GitHub organization for the project to basically manage all of the different code sources and project files and stuff like that that we might have access to. Google Drive is good for general things, I think, but as we go along and we make changes, I think GitHub is good for keeping track of different versions of things so that we can easily revert or have everything kind of in place and see the progress of what's being worked on overall. So GitHub is really useful for file and it's good for version control basically. So we control the different versions and keep track. It has like a persistent save state of our code and assets over time. So right now there are 7 repositories here in the repo. I think I'll actually open up that. I had a cool map of these repos on, should be under this Lonnies Fishtank. So I'll just pull it up from here for now. So there are a couple of different things here, but I think the most important is Lonnie's Fishtank. So this is the actual Unity project, has a little description there. This is the main Unity project. There's also the documentation for the code base that is found within the Unity project. Different things might go into these documents, but this documentation, but I think for now it's just documenting the scripts within the Unity project. There's this GitHub welcome page, which is basically the README file for, well, it's supposed to be the README file for this, but it doesn't actually look like, oh. Okay, this should be probably changed. Not sure why that's not a, I see it's for the public. I see it's for the public. Okay. So that's all that is. Yeah, not too important. There's the website, so I just threw together a really simple website, which I'll look at in a second. And so that basically shows, yeah, basically the welcome page for Fishhead Games, as well as a place to put the devlogs. So this devlogs repo is actually referenced by the website. So the website will pull whatever changes were written into this devlogs, which are pretty much just like markdown files. I like to go in and edit these in Obsidian and just upload the changes to the web pages here. And then once these are uploaded, the website will actually just take whatever's here and add them as pretty much devlogs or blog pages onto the website. So I'll show that later. And then there is the sample repository Lonnies Fishtank UI. I think it would be a good practice to keep kind of the assets into separate packages. So I want to try experimenting with that with some of the UI elements in the short term. We'll see how it works out. In the long term, maybe this might be a little bit overkill, but I think it could be a good way to keep relevant files together so that we don't have to go searching for them in the base Unity project, which can be a little bit of a headache. And so I've actually done that with another repo as well. So this is a UI framework, not necessarily UI assets or elements, but just the UI framework that I have enjoyed I have enjoyed using in previous projects that basically allows you to manage through between a bunch of different canvas and UI states. So that's the overview of the GitHub and everything that's pretty relevant as of now, I think. So finally, there's the website. This is a website that's hosted from GitHub. So this particular repository has basically a script that runs and it hosts the website that's in this source code. It builds it out and then it hosts it from GitHub. So GitHub allows us to host very basic static websites. That means they don't really have much like behind the scenes API stuff. It's just a very simple website. So that's good. It gives us a nice easy domain, fishheadgames.github.io. We can actually change this domain in the future if we want with our own custom one, but I think this works for now. And so this website is very bare bones right now. It just has a home page. It has this devlog that I'm working on right now with this rights-free image. And so I'm just throwing some stuff on here, but maybe in the future we can have some, I don't know. For me, it's just a nice way to kind of keep track of progress, and it helps to hold me accountable week to week, and I like seeing the progress as things go on. So right now there's only one post here, but as I add posts to the devlog repo, it will be populated more. So, and finally there's the about page, and this is just another page on the website. We can add different things about what we're doing and whatnot, who's Fishhead Games, stuff like that. And I threw in just the basic team page here. So yeah, right now this is publicly accessible, very easy to set up, pretty easy to edit as well. So yeah, can just take it and run with it, whatever we want to do with it.